Most people think intimidation comes from aggression. They imagine raised voices, strong opinions, dominance displays, or someone trying to overpower everyone in the room. But if you observe carefully, you'll notice something interesting. The people who command the most presence are often the quietest. They don't speak the most. They don't demand attention. They rarely try to prove themselves. Yet when they walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts. People notice them. Conversations slow down. And without saying a word, they seem to influence the energy of the entire environment. This type of presence often gets described as intimidating, but the intimidation is not created by threat. It's created by perception. Human beings constantly scan the social environment to understand power dynamics. Our brains are wired to detect signals of confidence, stability, and emotional control. These signals help us determine who is safe, who is unpredictable, and who holds authority. And interestingly, the brain does not measure authority based on volume. It measures it based on control. The first signal people subconsciously read is stillness. Most people are constantly moving. They shift in their seat. They adjust their posture. They fidget with their hands. They talk quickly. They interrupt silence. These behaviors communicate internal tension. They signal uncertainty or the need to fill space. But someone who is comfortable with silence sends a completely different signal. Stillness communicates control. When a person moves slowly, speaks deliberately, and does not rush to respond, the brain interprets that as confidence. Because someone who feels safe does not need to rush. Someone who feels secure does not feel pressure to prove themselves. Stillness creates psychological gravity. People instinctively pay attention to individuals who appear grounded. Another powerful signal is emotional regulation. Most people reveal their internal state very quickly. If they are nervous, it appears in their voice. If they are frustrated, it appears in their tone. If they feel challenged, they immediately become defensive. But when someone maintains emotional stability, even in tense situations, it creates an interesting psychological effect. It becomes unpredictable, not because they are dangerous, but because they are unreadable. The human brain prefers emotional signals it can easily categorize. Anger is easy to categorize. Excitement is easy to categorize. Fear is easy to categorize. But calmness under pressure creates ambiguity, and ambiguity demands attention. When someone does not react emotionally to situations that normally trigger reactions, the brain interprets that as strength. Because emotional stability suggests control over one's internal state. And control signals authority. There is another reason quiet individuals can appear intimidating. Scarcity. In psychology, scarcity increases perceived value. This principle applies to objects, opportunities, and even communication. If someone talks constantly, their words become predictable. Their presence becomes ordinary. But when someone speaks selectively, their words carry more weight. Silence builds anticipation. When a person rarely speaks, but always says something meaningful, people begin paying closer attention. Not because they are forced to, but because the brain associates scarcity with importance. The same principle applies to attention. If someone constantly seeks attention, it signals insecurity. But if someone appears comfortable without attention, it signals independence. Independence is psychologically powerful, because it suggests the person is not controlled by external validation. And when someone does not depend on validation, they appear difficult to influence. That perception alone can create intimidation. Another important factor is posture. Body language communicates more information than words. People who feel insecure often unconsciously shrink their posture. Their shoulders drop forward. Their eye contact becomes inconsistent. Their movements become quick and scattered. These behaviors signal vulnerability. But someone with quiet confidence occupies space differently. Their posture is stable. Their movements are deliberate. Their eye contact is steady but not aggressive. These signals tell the brain that this person feels comfortable in their environment, and comfort in social space is interpreted as status. Interestingly, intimidation does not require dominance. In fact, forced dominance often has the opposite effect. When someone tries too hard to appear powerful, it reveals insecurity. The need to prove strength suggests the person doubts it internally. Real presence is effortless. It does not try to overpower others. It simply exists without apology. Another psychological signal that contributes to quiet intimidation is patience. Most people struggle with waiting. They rush to respond in conversations. They rush to fill silence. They rush to explain themselves. But someone who is comfortable waiting creates tension in a different way. Silence stretches. People begin wondering what they are thinking, what they will say next, or whether they will speak at all. This patience shifts control of the interaction, because the person who is comfortable with silence controls the pace of communication, and controlling pace is a subtle form of influence. It signals emotional independence. Another reason some individuals appear intimidating is predictability, or rather, the lack of it. When someone behaves consistently and calmly across situations, it becomes difficult to manipulate them. They do not react impulsively. They do not escalate emotionally. They do not get pulled into unnecessary conflicts. This consistency creates psychological stability, and stability is powerful because unstable individuals are easier to control. But someone who maintains the same calm demeanor regardless of circumstances appears mentally strong, and mental strength creates natural authority. However, it is important to understand something. Quiet intimidation is not about making people uncomfortable. It is not about dominating social spaces. It is simply the byproduct of emotional self-control. When someone does not react impulsively, does not chase approval, and does not rush to prove themselves, their presence becomes noticeable. Not because they demand attention, but because they do not need it. This type of presence is often misunderstood. Some people interpret it as arrogance. Others interpret it as coldness. But in reality, it is simply emotional stability. People who possess this stability are comfortable with themselves. They do not constantly evaluate how they are perceived. They do not feel pressure to impress. And because they are not performing socially, their behavior appears authentic. Authenticity is surprisingly rare. Many people spend enormous energy managing impressions. They adjust their personality depending on the audience. They soften their opinions to avoid disagreement. They exaggerate confidence to hide insecurity. But someone who behaves consistently across situations stands out. Not because they are louder, but because they are stable. This stability reduces social noise. Their presence becomes calm rather than chaotic. And calmness in a chaotic environment naturally draws attention. If you observe respected leaders, you will often notice similar patterns. They speak slowly, they listen carefully, they rarely interrupt, they maintain eye contact without staring.
They respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively.
These behaviors are not tactics. They are reflections of internal control. People who control themselves do not need to control others. And that self-control creates a type of influence that feels effortless. The interesting part is that anyone can develop this presence. It does not require a specific personality. It requires awareness. The first step is slowing down. Most people move through conversations quickly. They rush their words. They respond before fully listening. They fill silence with unnecessary explanations. But when you slow down your pace, your behavior changes. You begin observing more. You begin reacting less. And this shift alone changes how others perceive you. The second step is emotional regulation. If someone criticizes you, pause before responding. If someone challenges you, stay calm. If someone tries to provoke a reaction, remain composed. Every time you maintain emotional control, you reinforce stability. Over time, people begin expecting that stability, and expectation becomes reputation. The third step is reducing the need to impress. When people stop performing socially, their presence becomes natural. They speak when necessary. They listen when others speak. They do not exaggerate stories or opinions. They allow silence to exist. And this relaxed confidence becomes visible. Presence is not created through effort. It is revealed when effort disappears. When you stop trying to control how others perceive you, your behavior becomes more grounded. And grounded behavior creates influence, because people trust individuals who appear comfortable with themselves, not those constantly trying to prove something. The truth is that intimidation is rarely about fear. It is about uncertainty. When someone cannot easily read you, they pay more attention. When someone cannot provoke you emotionally, they respect your control. When someone senses you are not dependent on their approval, they recognize your independence. And independence is powerful, because someone who does not depend on validation cannot easily be manipulated. So if you want stronger presence, focus on internal control. Control your reactions. Control your pace. Control your need for approval. As these things stabilize, your presence will change naturally. Not because you tried to appear intimidating, but because calm confidence speaks louder than noise. And the most powerful people in the room are rarely the ones speaking the most. They are the ones who understand that true authority begins with self-control.